This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome back.
Here we go.
Another episode of No Other Pod. I'm Jimmy, along with my good buddy Dan. Dan, unfortunately, this is the first of the Sporting KC offseason podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Well, it had to come sometime, right? I'm okay. I'm okay. I did not go balls to the wall emotionally investment on this postseason, right? I was just kind of riding the wave, enjoying the time, man.
Yeah.
So it's been fun.
I mean, we did talk about partway through the regular season that if we could turn things around enough to get to the postseason, which at the time we, was by no means a guarantee, and if somehow we could end up playing St. Louis City SC in the playoffs, and if somehow we could eliminate them, everything after that would be gravy. And look, you look back, and I'm not saying that we'll do the full retrospective later in the offseason. What does a successful season mean and all that? But I agree. I kind of went into this Houston game. I obviously wanted to win as we had those chances, toward the end of the game, especially chance after chance. Like you could ask Brittany, I was here and I was like yelling at the TV a little bit. I got into it. But
sure.
But when the game ended, I looked at it and I was like, you know what? I kind of expected this. And, it sucks. But,
I get to talking at the TV as well. And, so much so that I think my spouse is sleeping. So at one time I just go, "You're going to talk to me?" I was mad at the game, but it sounded like I was mad at her. And she was just like, "I don't have anything to say. I'm not good at soccer commentary. I'm just enjoying it."
Yeah, it was it was a bummer. I mean, and it sucked that, this season, this has been such a weird season. There's been ups, there's been downs, there's been, times where we thought like we were on the highest of highs and then lowest of lows. And
Dude,
it's just
last week we talked about, hey, did you know Ben Sweat played for this team this year? That feels like a different season.
Yeah, it does.
Weird,
this season
man.
Feels like it was 84 years long.
Yeah. And then with injuries and you got Gotti Kinda all over the place being injured, and then international duty, and Allen's injured, Johnny's injured, Fontas earning his spot as being one of the best center backs again. It's been a weird year, buddy. There's just been highs and lows all over the place. It's been emotional. It is weird to be a soccer fan.
It has. It's been very emotional. So first off, thanks to everybody who stuck with us throughout the year. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of time for doing season-long retrospectives, for talking to some people, maybe getting some interviews about what Sporting needs to do going forward. We're going to focus today on the game, on a really long and interesting article that came out in the Kansas City Star about what turned Sporting KC season around. I want to talk about that a little bit, and then maybe cover the rest of the MLS Cup playoffs here for a little bit to finish it on out. But
you'll all be pleased to know that I'm handsome again. Mustache has been removed. I'm no longer in. I'm no longer in porn. So
for the listeners, the Kooser stash is no more.
It's gone. I messaged you today, and I was like, so cold on my upper lip.
I did. It is funny. I didn't think about that, and then I saw that text come through, and I was like, my immediate emotional response was a little sad. I was a little sad. I was like, oh, I grew fond of the mustache.
It's difficult to maintain. All right, more power to all you mustachio gentlemen out there, but it's not easy. So I'm glad to be done and look youthful again.
Before we jump into the game, I would be remiss if I didn't ask, how did your Thanksgiving holiday go?
Pretty low key. I mean, the weekend as a whole was pretty busy. Had a lot of stuff going on, but the holiday in its own was just a few hours at my parents' house, and that was it.
Awesome. Same thing. In-laws, watched the parade, watched a little football, watched the Packers inexplicably defeat the Detroit Lions, which confused me. I'm a Packers fan, and I don't know what to feel about this season. So
I don't pay attention to other conferences or divisions outside the Chiefs. Or are the Packers not good?
Well, they weren't good, and now they are good. And as our producer Nick points out, it was a waxing moon, and there was a tweet going viral beforehand.
What is that?
Like, it's a type of phase of the moon, and I believe it says, like, I forget exactly what the graphic said, but it was something about like when the Lions play on a waxing moon on Thanksgiving, they don't win. Like this is like a thing that happens every time the moon is in this phase during Thanksgiving when the Lions always play, and sure enough, Packers came out and pretty handily beat the Lions. So
that's weird, man.
Yeah. Hey, the moon doesn't like the Lions, apparently. So
it's not. See, dude, there's some, I will say, there's some astrology nutters out there that are just all about that stuff. And I can't disprove any of it. Like, I'm just kind of like, some of it kind of makes sense, but other stuff is just like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. So got to watch that. I saw KU football. They won, I believe. So
yeah. I'd say so. Kind of smushed them, you know.
Beat Cincinnati, huge dub. You know, amazing interception from Kobe Bryant, I believe is his name.
See, I got a little nervous, buddy, because last week we were like, someone's got to turn around this losing streak that our Kansas and Missouri sports are having here with the Chiefs and KU and whoever else. But KU and the Chiefs stole that winning power, and I was like, I'm not feeling good about sporting now. Yeah, they took the win.
True. That's true. And we in the Metro, we avoided what seemed like a snowpocalypse in the middle part of the state. I don't know if in Topeka you got as much snow as they did in Wichita or Manhattan, because you watched that K-State game.
I did not watch that because, boo. But I think, dude, I think we got a good 6 or 7 inches.
Yeah, we didn't get that here in the Metro. I mean, we got a couple, but nothing too bad. So
it was so much so I had a buddy over to watch Survivor Series, and he went to run an errand, and we ran to Hy-Vee to pick up some food because the pizza place we were going to order from was out of plant-based chicken. And I was like, that sucks. That ruins everything. So we ran down to Hy-Vee, and I'm going like 20 and a 45. It was wild. There was a car in the ditch, and I was like, what are we doing?
Right.
People die on their way to Hy-Vee.
Is plant-based chicken worth this?
Unbelievable. So we get our stuff, and my buddy actually, I was like, dude, we got a guest room. You might as well just get drunk and stay here because it's fucking bad out there.
I love that you were like, how could we be out? This is irresponsible for us to be out driving in this, but also you were like, let's order pizza and make somebody else drive in this to bring.
No. We were going to pick up the pizza.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It wasn't delivery at all. They're a little far away, but I told my buddy, I was like, you got to stay here. Like, it's insane for your Toyota Prius to go out there.
Yeah. And Survivor Series, I didn't end up watching. I saw the clips on last. I saw there was a return.
Hey, we had a great time, man. I installed ambient lighting on the back of my TV. Yeah. Those colors were popping, bro. Purples and greens. It was a hell of an immersive experience. You guys should look into those strips.
The Chicago flag colors when CM Punk came out.
I don't know, but it's just
you blacked out when it happened.
I'll probably turn it down when watching sporting events because it really picks up on that green field.
Yeah,
and kind of makes the field look bad because it's so bright on the back of my TV. It's weird.
I get that. So I do have to ask, since you are the resident WWE expert, did you expect CM Punk to return?
I thought it was a whole bunch of bogus talk. I was like, there's no way. Like, this is stupid. And then, dude, the credits came up. You know how it is? It's like trademark WWE, the watermark. And then the music went, and we were getting up. We were going to bed. I was about to turn it off, and it just goes, and we lost it.
What if it would have been Paul Heyman coming out again like he did years ago?
I would have loved that. That would have been dope.
Would have been funny. My boss he's a big WWE guy, and I text him, and all I said was, holy shit. And he goes, bro, I am on the couch. I have the flu, laying down, dying. He goes, I sit straight up. I sat straight up when it happened.
Those are those moments, though. Make fun of wrestling all you want. Wrestling provides moments like that.
It does.
And it's like, you remember where you were when this happened. And it's just so fun, man. And there's just so much opportunity. And he's not coming in to save a company like when he went for AEW. Right. He's coming in to just be like a big game hitter.
Just
he doesn't need to be shit. Yeah. He does not need to put a company on his back like he was trying to do over there. There's no need for that.
It is pretty wild. And then we'll talk soccer here in a sec, but it is pretty wild just when you think about how they were able to pull it off. Because I read that interview with Triple H, and he was like, literally, we didn't have the contract signed until that day.
Yeah.
I went to the booth, kicked people out, took over, said, put up the watermark, and then said, all right, now start CM Punk's music. And he was like,
people did not know.
He was, no, well, and I saw a tweet from one wrestling journalist. They were backstage because they're backstage in the event. And he tweets like 2 minutes before Punk comes on. He goes, I don't know what's happening, but they just cleared us all out of the back room. So they like literally emptied it. And then like 20 seconds before the music hit, he tweeted, he goes, I've been told CM Punk's here. And then the music hit.
That's pretty wild. That business, I mean, if you could get if you could be a carny and like travel in that company, like how fun would that be?
I hear it's just wild backstage.
It'd be a job of a lifetime, you know?
So
it'd be similar to like working on a cruise ship or something. It's like you're always going.
It's wild. It's nuts. So I enjoy it. I'm on like kind of the periphery of it. I don't watch everything, but like obviously I get it in my algorithm enough that I'm interested. I watch some of the bigger premium events or whatever.
Yeah.
They're getting me. I'm interested.
Dude, don't do this because I'll talk to you all day about it.
I know.
We'll get a No Other Pod wrestling spinoff here. We'll get another show.
We'll see. So anyway, let's go over at least sort of how we're feeling heading into this game once lineups come out before we take our break. You know, it's listed at 6:00. I actually thought it would be like 6:30 by the time it kicked off because it was Fox, and it ended up kicking at 6:09. So I think Apple kicked them into gear a little bit or something. They're like, we're not doing this 25-minute pregame show.
And I think they're doing this because they want to stack those games. So if it went into extra time, there's enough of a cushion so you can still watch that game and not miss any of the next game.
That's right.
The next game didn't kick off till a little later than 8:30, right? Like 8:50?
Right. Yeah, and we talked last week. I mean, like they've messed with the playoff format so much. We talked, I think, or at least I think I talked last week, still thinking like if this went to, there would be no extra time to go right to penalty kicks. And I had to remind myself, nope, it's switched for this round. There would be 2 15-minute extra time periods, which takes away a little bit of the advantage of having Team Melia, but still, you could get to penalties. You get there.
Right.
And then, you know, we didn't quite know what the lineup would look like in the midfield in particular because Gotti's been traveling around the world. We didn't know which 3 they would pick. You know, we assume it's going to be Rosero back there at center back, even though he had a broken face from 3 weeks ago, and probably Leibold at left back, even though because there's really nobody else, even though he wasn't fully fit. And yeah, the 11 comes out, and that's probably Sporting's best 11 at this point. That's what we've kind of come to know and see with, you know, the Polito, Shallowy, Russell front line, some combination of Kinda or Tommy alongside Rodoya and Voltaire, and then Davis, Rosero, Fontas, and now Tim Leibold at left back in front of Melia. I looked at that, and then I looked at that Houston lineup, which, yeah, it's a fine Houston lineup, but this Sporting team was good enough to take on the Houston Dynamo, even down in Houston, who have lost like 2 games all time at home in the playoffs or something like that. It's a tough place to play.
Wild, man. It's why, and their fans, you know, they had good fandom out there. It seemed like there were a lot of different empty seats as well, but it is what it is. I mean, there's probably more fans than normal, and I noticed you were picking fights with them as well.
Well, they started it. I was kind of
naturally.
I tweeted from the pod account, as I do sometimes. I wake up and I just said something like, "It's a good day to beat the Houston Dynamo,"
as you do every day, every time we play.
And you know, as they do when they're confident in their team, they waited until after the victory to start talking shit.
For sure.
So after they won, some Dynamo fans found that and started quote tweeting it and replying and sending pictures. And I was like, oh, the 4 Dynamo fans out there found this tweet. And then they started counting off in the replies how many there actually were. And wouldn't you know it, good for them. They got all the way up to 7.
Hey, nice.
So
you were so wrong. You were 3 less. Okay.
There were 7 fans out there who found the tweet, not the 4.
Good for them. They're really crushing it down there.
They are. It is a bummer because when El Tri, the Mexican team, or one of the Liga MX teams plays down there, they sell it out, man. It's a good soccer city. The Dynamo just haven't been able to connect with the fan base there, and it is a bummer.
I enjoyed watching them. I thought they played very well, and I enjoyed their play as a whole. I mean, I just, looking back on it and thinking a little less emotional, I'm like, yeah, I'm pissed that my team's not getting it done, but Houston kind of looks great and would love to see them go toe-to-toe with LAFC, man.
And, you know, we'll talk more about how the game transpired and everything here in just a minute after the break, but credit to Ben Olsen, the coach who came in and in a single year essentially fixed the Houston Dynamo. figured out how to better use Hector Herrera, who's a very good midfielder, as we saw, and had some key contributions. I mean, seems like maybe Ben Olsen was not the problem in DC, as DC has continued to flounder after they fired Ben Olsen, and he's gone on to greener pastures and now is in the Western Conference Finals against potentially a beatable LAFC team. So we'll see. But I don't know. It's a tough game, but let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back after the break, and we'll talk about what happened, what transpired, and what went wrong.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Listen, buddy, how come our number 9 can't score? Well, you need him to score. That's not why we lost the game, but damn it, it's not hard to look at that moment.
It is a bummer, especially after, not long ago, re-signing him to a new designated player contract where he gets even more money. Those are, I'm not going to sit here and lie. Those are the moments where you want your designated player striker, who's making however many millions of dollars a year, to be able to step up and put one away.
And, no one's going to beat him up more than himself, probably, or maybe he's over it. I don't know. But it's someone who broke your transfer fee record, and then you get a contract extension this year, and man, oh man, you want to, I'm spoiling everything right now, but like, you can't even talk about the handball situation without talking about that situation. We didn't lose the damn game because of a missed handball call. You know what I mean?
Right. It sucks that it happened, and I want to talk about it, and I think the refs got it wrong, and we're gonna air our grievances, but you're right. And Johnny Russell said as much after the game. He was like, it's a handball. It's also not the reason we lost.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
Houston still looks fast out there, man. They look quick.
They do. And so Peter, I believe was Peter, one of them said, I think it might have been Peter after the game, that like their midfield style of play is so freeform. It's not, Hector Herrera, if you look at the lineup graphic, he's listed almost as a D mid and sort of in like a double pivot 4-2-3-1. He doesn't just sit back there and pull strings for the defensive midfielder spot. He is floating all over. He's the engine of that team, and Jimmy Conrad mentioned it a couple weeks ago, and we talked about it last week.
Yeah.
This team goes as Hector Herrera goes, and he is the force in the midfield, and what makes it so difficult to control is it's not just a traditional, 6-8-10, kind of like Sporting has. He's floating in and out, and they're rotating constantly, and so it gets harder for a midfielder like Rodoya or Remy Voltaire to sit there and figure out, okay, who am I marking or where do I have to be? And it creates a little bit more confusion and space for Houston. And ultimately, when you look at possession, 64% possession for Houston, 36 for Kansas City. Part of that's by design, I think, a strategy by Peter Vermees. And part of that, I think, is a testament to there were some times where Houston was able to move the ball throughout the midfield, and it just looked like Sporting couldn't catch up to them.
Yeah, and that guy from Gryffindor was good too, man. just he was having a great game.
Yeah, every time I hear Gryffindor's name, I'm like, this. Are we all just going to sit here and ignore this? Like,
no, I need the announcer to put on his best sorting hat voice and be like, Gryffindor.
Next time he scores, if somebody's not like, 1 goal for Gryffindor.
Yeah. That's not a coincidence, by the way. Someone naming him that, like, is a Harry Potter fan, right?
So I actually tried to, I haven't looked up how old he is.
I already did. Got it for you. He was born in 99. The books were written, first book was written in 97.
Okay. I mean, that's what I was going to try to figure out, because I remember when the books came out, and I was I don't remember, 3rd grade, something like that. And I was, this might be
you name your kid Griffin Dorsey. Dude, that'd be like your dad naming you Big. He's just Big Mac. That's it. Big McDonald's fan in this family.
I think, you know what? I think you might be right. And I think maybe I want to do a little bit more investigative journalism on this, because this is the story that MLS has been waiting to be broken.
That's what we need to know. The people need to know.
Yeah, with the Harry Potter show in the works, we need to know, is Griffin Dorsey named after Gryffindor?
100%.
and you're that big of a Harry Potter fan where you're going into a childbirth and your last name is Dorsey and you're like, what should we name him? Griffin.
That's wild. Come on, you have to think about that too. And I think if I was naming a kid, I'm thinking about all the ways. First of all the ways he's going to be made fun of.
Yes.
So that's what you always think about that. Like, what does that name rhyme with?
Right. What do the initials spell?
Yeah. Sorry. I'm a Kooser loser here, buddy. It's been a long time coming. Don't open old wounds.
Yep. So it's you make a good point. We had talked about before the game started, on last week's pod, the key for Sporting Kansas City was score first, because we've seen this team is not built to come from behind. If the team's first, almost near success or almost complete success. This team doesn't score first or is down at the half. You read the stat last week. I forget what it was, but we were winless down. Yeah. And it felt like immediately when the game started, there was a chance for Sporting Kansas City, because Johnny kind of exploited the right side down like 2 minutes in, and he cut into the box and he did his classic Johnny thing, and he split the defenders and he got a shot off, and Steve Clark couldn't quite gather it, and you're like, okay, we're setting the tone.
Here we go. Here, let me tell you this. Steve Clark's not as good as we made him look. I just got to tell you that right now. He's not some all-star keeper here, okay?
Yeah.
It's Steve Clark, dude.
Yeah.
And I don't know what he's doing with his hair. He is having some kind of midlife crisis going on. But that man he was looking goofy.
Well, it was funny. We were watching the game, and Brittany hasn't watched a lot of sporting games. She certainly hasn't watched any Sporting Houston games this year. And we're
watching this with you?
She watched this with me. We're sitting there, we're watching, and she's getting a little into it, and she said something. I forget exactly what it was, but they show Steve Clark, and he did something, and she was like, I don't like him. And I was like, yeah, he's kind of a turd. And she was like, okay, I didn't want to make any assumptions. I didn't want to judge a book by its cover, is what she said. But he looks like he's a turd, so I'm glad to find out that he is.
I love that. She's like a golden retriever, great judge of character.
Yeah, she was like, I looked at him and I was like, I don't like him.
You're like, babe, I love you. But he's been in the league for a very long time. Had a stint in Columbus, a stint in Portland.
Yeah. He's
always in the playoffs with those teams, so it's like, shit, maybe he is kind of decent. I don't know.
I mean, he's fine. He's fine. That's what he is. But
we kicked it at him, okay? We didn't make him look spectacular. We're just like, try to save this when we kick it right at you really hard.
That's the problem. Sporting Kansas City, if you look at the stats, 12 shots on overall, 4 shots on goal. And if you look at the 4 shots on goal, one of them being this shot from Johnny Russell directly at Steve Clark.
Right at him. Daniel had an amazing opportunity where he kind of had to stretch out for a minute, but not very far. But Daniel, that ball too, bouncing at Daniel like that, that's a hard ball to put away with power.
It is.
But he did his best, and I was ready to pop. I was ready to, oh man, it was building.
It is. And Houston on the attack, they clearly had a strategy, and it seemed to be working. They decided, which honestly, it's a little bit different than I thought they were going to do. I thought they were going to attack down their right side, Sporting's left side, because Tim Leibold being not fully fit, I figured that's what they were going to do. That was not their plan. They decided to go at Jake Davis, and Jake Davis has had a very good year up until this point, but he struggled.
They had him. I think they knew they had him on the speed race, though.
Yeah. They worked down that left side pretty well, and Sporting had a really high line they were playing at times too, and so Jake would be backpedaling, and they would just get a free runner down the left side with the overlapping run, or they moved the ball so well in that free-flowing midfield that they would get somebody down that left side, and by the time he rotated over, they could cut it back to the middle of the field, and it's just what they could do. They got a couple of shots off early in the first 10 minutes from that left side, and Corey Baird almost put one away in the 10th minute for them. If it wasn't for Andreu Fontas, who, credit to him and his reaction skills, it also was kind of right place, right time, because Tim Melia kind of got a hand to a ball, punched it away, couldn't quite parry it in or gather it in, and then Corey Baird could have easily been 1-0 on the 10th minute for Houston, and Andreu Fontas somehow saves it and just kind of kicks it away to save his life. But
look, I know Fontas was, a couple of years ago, he was like MLS Defender of the Year caliber, And then the next year he really down, and everyone's like, what the hell? Why are we still keeping this guy? And this year he really had a resurgence and dared someone to take this from him. He had to get hurt to get replaced for a minute, but then got right back in the lineup.
Yeah.
And I've just been a fan of his awareness, his ball control, his touches. It's been great, man. And another thing, I don't really like Corey Baird, so let's get that out of the way.
No,
Not a Corey Baird fan.
No.
And one last thing, tell me you weren't watching Tim Leibold the whole game.
Yeah.
My eyes were on this man nonstop. It's not fair. It's not fair to watch a single player because you know he's like the odd man out that, you know, if something bad happens, it could happen there.
Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I was watching him. It was just so strange to me. And I mean, credit to Ben Olsen and Houston for figuring this out. Maybe maybe this was like a double reverse psychology situation where they're like, they want us to think we're going to go down the left side, so we're going to go down the right side or whatever. Like, who knows? But
or maybe it was just coincidental, and they just did what they had to do.
And they just felt the game out, and that's how it went. But I mean, you're watching Nelson Quinones on Sporting's right side, their left side, and if you look at the highlight package on MLSsoccer.com, it's just shot after shot after shot and run after run after run down that left side of Houston's right at Jake Davis, and they really took advantage of it. Really, the only other opportunity that came for Sporting in the first half that was, you know, much worth it. There were a couple. Gadi Kinda had a chance, you know, in about the 25th minute. From the camera angle on TV, it looked like it might have had a chance to go in. It got deflected. Who knows if it doesn't get deflected, if there's a chance there. Daniel Shallowy sent one way over the goal into stands. It just, Sporting, for most of the first half, after like those first couple of minutes, didn't feel like we ever really got comfortable, and they were trying to go on the counter, but it almost looked like Sporting earlier in the season where they were afraid to get into the box and make runs into the box, and they weren't getting those quality shots until late in the game, and by that point it was a little too late.
Yeah, man. So I agree. It's just, we didn't have that, I don't know, there was no urgency either. Like at one point I remember in this game saying, good for them for staying patient and calm, because us as fans, we're like, come on, we're running out of time here. We got to do something, show some urgency.
Right.
But I'm like, no, maybe it's good that they're going business as usual, staying patient. But I don't know. I would have liked to see a little urgency, but that can turn to mistakes too, right?
It can. And, you know, they stayed patient and they absorbed these Houston attacks. And how many times have we seen this year, even in the last handful of months for Sporting Kansas City, where we'll say they looked a little shaky for the first 15 or 20 minutes. Then they settled in and they really took control of the rest of the game. In the final 70 minutes, they were the better team. So I wasn't that nervous through the first 15, 20 minutes, even though like after 10 minutes, the possession was like 84-16 in the favor of Houston or something like that. I wasn't that nervous. I felt most nervous whenever Houston had a set piece, because I was like, weird things happen to the Sporting KC club on set pieces. And it's almost tragically poetic for this Sporting KC team that the goal that ultimately sent them home came near the end of the first half, when we talked about having to finish out half strong, on a corner kick by Hector Herrera that was into a crowded box that probably should have been cleared, but Franco Escobar got a clean header to it and put it away, and Jake Davis just kind of got a little lost, and Rosero couldn't quite get there, and Escobar just makes it 1-0 off of a set piece. And kind of when that happened, I didn't think, all right, it's over, but I was like, damn, this team's not built to come back.
That hurt a lot, man. And I right after that, though, I mean, Allen gets that little one-on-one chance with the keeper pretty much, and he took too many touches, I think. I don't know, man. And then Daniel has a follow-up and then potential handball right there. It's just, I don't know. You trying to talk about that? You trying to talk about the handball?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was literally 2 minutes later where you're right. Allen tries to get a little too cute with it and toe pokes it. And he got played in beautifully by Gadi Kinda. I mean, just an absolute gorgeous through ball off the first touch. And Allen did well to hold up his run. he's got to take that either first time or take one quick touch and then shoot it. Like, I know I said trying to get the ball deeper into the box, but this is not a situation where you can play around, because you have to know those Dynamo defenders are crashing down on you. He takes too long. 3 people get around him. He toe pokes it into Steve Clark. Steve Clark is off his line. Daniel Shallowy fires it on with pace. And then, what's this dude's name? I keep forgetting his last name. A defender gets back in the line. Sviatchenko for Houston gets back there. And the reason I knew that this was different and wasn't just the like, oh, I messed up and I'm just going to call for something. Both Shallowy and Polito simultaneously and emphatically start waving their hand and hitting their arm. Handball.
Sure.
And it's not normally that emphatic if there's not something to it. And so then they held up the game, and they're showing angles, and they're showing these angles, and my first thought was like, damn, some of these side angles, like, I'm pretty confident it hits his arm. I'm pretty confident it's a handball. I don't know if it's like fully definitive. And then they wave it off, and I'm like, that really feels like that was a handball. Then they show that damn angle from behind the goal after they've already restarted play, and that's the one where I saw that, where you see the ball come, you see his arm move, and I'm like, that's a handball.
That's not a definitive angle, though, because from that angle, it could have hit his body first and roll into his arm.
But does it matter?
I don't know. What are the fucking rules?
Well, that's the problem. The rules are written in a very confusing way that, even Andrew Wiebe, I'm going to pull up this tweet right now, who ultimately, Wiebe, and I know he's from Kansas City, so people are like, oh, it's hard. Wiebe did ultimately say, for me, it's a red card and a handball. But he tweeted out what the rule actually says. And so for a handball, it has to be an offense if a player, one, deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, for example, moving the hand or arm toward the ball, or touches the ball with their hand or arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when the position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. By having their hand or arm in such a position, the player takes risk of their hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalized. So the rule doesn't say anything about, well, if it hits their chest first, it's
right. I know.
Fair.
I'm not going to cry over it, because, like we said, this didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. You know what I mean? It's not like our attack was just blazing.
Sure. Now, what I do think is his arm was somewhat by his side, but it, like, his lower arm was a full foot off his body. It was kind of off to the side.
You have to say it's clear and obvious to overturn the call on the field. And I don't think it is, because the freaking videos were blurry, bro. It was like World War II footage.
For me, and I know I'm biased, but that last angle I thought was clear and obvious. Now, you see a ball hit the elbow, you see the elbow shake, and the elbow's 6 to 8 inches off his body at least. To me, that was it. Our guys, the Cooligans, they even tweeted it out, and they're like, it's wild to see this angle, and then just know that they didn't even this wasn't a handball. And then you have Jeff Reuter, a writer for The Athletic. He said he thought it was a handball. Taylor Twellman thought it was a handball. There were a lot of people where I'm like, okay, but
like, why didn't we help out a little bit? Why wasn't the video clearer? Why wasn't it, it's like they slowed it down and he just became pixelated. Like, it was so weird.
And I do think that's a fair gripe. And I think that actually goes back to was it Cincinnati Philly in their game where there was the offside shout. And Philly thought the Cincinnati player was offside, and from the angle it looks like he's probably offside, but you also know the angle's like 10 yards behind the player, so there's math in play. And so this is the thing that I think is kind of the point you're making, and I agree. If you're gonna have VAR, if you're gonna have a system where you can take a look at video angles and overturn calls, you sure as shit better invest in enough cameras and good enough cameras that you can have clear and obvious or definitive angles of what's happening. Because if you don't, and you're like, we have this imperfect system that's obviously it's not going to be 100% right, but the excuse can't be, we just didn't have the right angle. Because then get the right angle.
the technology in the Premier League is insane. Like, they have that goal line technology. They'll like stop it and then rotate the camera around the play. If we did that, it's just going to look like a blurry mess, like you're trying to watch Cinemax illegally or something. Like, it's not feasible. We couldn't even see anything. Like, look where it hits his hand. Okay, kinda. But that rear angle, you're right. That was nuts that they even showed that. And that a VAR referee saw that and was like, nah, just tossed it out.
Didn't even signal down to the ref, hey, there might be something here. Come look at it with me.
Didn't he? No. Oh, dude, that's the worst. That he got so high on his high horse, like, nah, I don't need a second set of eyes. I got this. Listen here, that's called little man syndrome. Trying to be the big dog out there when guess what? You're not the big dog. You're upstairs in the booth. You're nothing.
I don't know. It sucks. And I think in my heart of hearts, I believe that's a handball and there's nothing that we can do about it. And what sucks is it also would have been a red card. So they would have been down a man.
The game.
We would have been tied probably going into the half and then been up a man for the entire second half. But
that would have been wild. I mean, it coulda, woulda, shoulda.
The loser's lament is blaming the referees.
I'm going to go right back to it and just say this team had no chance of even being here. Okay?
Yeah.
We had no chance of even beating St. Louis.
Yeah.
Everyone counted us out in May. But we had to go, get in a circle and swing our peepees around.
I do want to talk about that. I did just want to say, there were chances in the second half. They brought on Willie Agata. Polito had another chance. Willie Agata had a great chance when Willie fired his shot on frame and then it got blocked by a defender. I was like, when that happened, I was like, that was the last chance. That was it.
When he came on, though, I go, here we go. Willie's scoring right now. You can feel it. You can feel it. She got two strikers in there, and then we're like, you know what? Bring the vets on. Zusi and Roger will get it done.
There were chances. I mean, and there were moments in the second half where Sporting KC felt like the better team, and they were firing. Shallowy had a shot that was on target in about the 69th, 70th minute that Steve Clark made a great save on. We were pushing, and we were pushing hard. And Peter even said in the postgame, I think we had the better chances. And I think you could argue he's right because really their only clear chance came off the set piece and then maybe one other shot. If you can't finish.
They packed it in, though, at the end. Like, they were putting everyone behind the ball, and it was real difficult.
They did.
It's just, we weren't going to get it done, man. But, we were getting corner kicks. I will say the second half was arguably boring at first. And you know this because you look at the freaking highlights, and it's like the second half is kicking off, and then nothing happens, and the highlights go like 15 minutes forward.
Yeah.
And then there's a highlight, and then it goes another 10 minutes, and it's like that's just how the second act. What second act? How the second half was.
Second act.
It just wasn't that as exciting as the first.
Yeah. No, you're right. They almost sealed it with a minute left in stoppage time. Timmy bounced it off his face. But
Tim, dude, Tim doing Tim things. You gotta love it.
Ultimately, 6 minutes of stoppage time. The game ends. It's 1-0. This is a tip your hat to Houston game, I think. Sure, they played well. Sporting also played, decent for large parts of the game and then didn't capitalize when they needed to. And when you don't capitalize on your opportunities, you're not going to win games. And I think that's ultimately what happened. And that's where, even Johnny Russell said, it's a handball for me. I'm not going to sit and say that's why we lost the game. It's not. But in games as tight as this and in occasions like this, I don't understand why referees aren't 100% sure. So,
yeah,
I think it's a fair question. But then he went on, I'm not going to sit here and be a sore loser and say that's why we lost the game because it's not. So, true.
And Houston's very much a contender here, man. I mean, you wouldn't be in this position if you weren't.
Yeah.
I don't. They're by far my last pick to win MLS Cup out of the 4 remaining teams.
Sure,
but to think that they can't do it is just a silly thing. Like they're absolutely in the mix here.
Yeah, if you look at, they're not going to host MLS Cup. They can't because they're the lowest seeded team remaining.
It's in Ohio, bro. Ohio gets an MLS Cup,
even if it's Columbus or LAFC. Is that true?
Yeah,
I think you might be right because of the way standings or points worked out.
It's wild. And if you live in Ohio, that's a pretty cool feeling to know that Ohio is hosting.
Yeah, you're right, because Columbus finished, even though they were the 3rd seed in LAFC. Well, LAFC, I guess, is the 3rd seed too. Columbus
they win the tiebreaker.
5 more points and wins the tiebreaker. So, man, yeah, MLS Cup's going to Ohio. There's a Hell is Real Derby for the Eastern Conference Finals, which is wild. I mean, you got to think Cincinnati and LAFC are the 2 favorites to make it to the finals, and then
sure,
if that's the case, I mean, Cincinnati has a chance to win MLS Cup in the same year that they won the Supporters Shield. And when you think about where they came from just a few years ago as an expansion team, that's a pretty insane story.
I know MLS Cup is not set yet, the final, but I'm very much excited for it. I will be watching. It'll be fun no matter who's in it out of these last 4 teams.
Yeah, for sure. So LAFC hosts Houston on December 2nd at 8:30 p.m. And then right before that, Eastern Conference Final, Cincinnati hosts Columbus, 5 p.m. That Eastern Conference Final game, that's a delicious game.
That's pretty dope.
That's wild to have that rivalry in the final.
Cincinnati's been too good. They've just been too good all year. So it's tough to say that they're not going to win the whole thing, but I'm here for it, man. We gotta. It's about to become silly season, as we all like to call it here in the biz. But it's we're about to lose some of your favorite players on Sporting Kansas City. It could very well be a lot of movement in the roster.
Yeah,
shakeups.
And that's one of my things that I wanted to ask you before I do want to dive into this ranch story that turned the season around a little bit. Sure. But do you think, in your heart of hearts, was that the last time? Well, I know. I don't know why I keep saying that. I've never said that. And
I know. Where do you get the last from?
5 minutes? I don't know. I must have heard it somewhere. Was that the last time we see Graham Zusi and Roger Espinoza in a Sporting KC uniform?
It's tough, right? It almost felt like a swan song situation with them subbing in at the end like that. Because I was like, at one point, you want to bring someone new into the game to change the game. But when you bring someone like those two, who are veterans of this team, it's almost kind of like a send-off, right? It felt weird.
Yeah. I mean, I can easily justify it to myself from a sporting standpoint. Jake Davis didn't have a great game. Zusi's the other right back. Tim Leibold was not fit. Roger's the only other guy with left back experience really available. So I can come up with all sorts of reasons why it makes sense. But I think the announcer maybe mentioned it, and I felt it as they came in. I was like, damn. Especially for Roger, maybe even more so than Graham, it kind of felt like this might be it. Although Roger's told us multiple times, I'll be back as much as Sporting KC will have me.
Oh, sure. So, and I do wonder if, you think Roger's done, leaving? If Sporting doesn't want him, he won't go anywhere else?
I don't think he'll play anywhere else. And he kind of said as much when there were retirement rumors earlier. Yeah. I'm not done. He goes, I'm not going to play anywhere else, but I want to be here.
Because I can see Zusi trying something else out if someone wants to pay him. If someone wants to pay him to be on their club, then I could see him going for it.
Yeah. I don't
know.
That would be so weird. I mean, it was weird when Beasler was on Austin. I
forgot about that. Dude, I just found out that my stepbrother works with Beasler's dad.
Well, there you go.
How wild is that?
It would be almost painful to see Graham Zusi in another team shirt. But
yeah, it would. It'd be different. Seeing Beasler in that green and black, it was like, what the hell is happening?
Zusi, I'm pretty sure, has an option for next year. I don't remember if Roger has an option for next year or if they just signed him to a 1-year deal. I'm trying to look it up right now. Regardless, there's going to have to be, they both have options for next year. Zusi's much more of a financial hit. It's not huge, but he made $325,000 this year. I don't know what the option would be. Roger, he made $85,000 this year. I mean, he was basically making the veteran minimum. So he's just happy to be here.
This business is wild. You think about regular job, you should make more money. You get raises, more money as you get older. You play soccer. I mean, Roger and Zusi were $1 million players a few years ago, and then down
Zusi
to
designated. They were both designated players at one point.
Yeah. And now down to 300, and it's like, oh man, sports is the only damn business where you got to take pay cuts to stay employed.
Down to 85 for Roger, which is still by any normal job, it's a very good salary.
Sure,
yeah. But for a future sporting legend, which they both are,
it's weird, man.
It does feel like we're getting closer to the end of an era for this club, where Beasler's gone, Seth's gone, Benny's gone. Pretty soon, Roger and Zusi will be gone. And, how much longer does Tim have? He's getting, older. Keepers can stick around a little bit longer, but you never know. I mean, I think he's approaching that time too. And then it really will be interesting to see, how long does Peter stick around beyond this contract, assuming he makes it through this contract? How much of a rebuild does he have left in him? Stuff that we talked about a little bit with Jimmy Conrad when he was on. So,
yeah,
I don't know. We'll see. Let's talk about, though, this article that Sam McDowell wrote. It came out a few days before the Western Conference.
I did not know about this until today.
Interesting.
Sunday.
Okay, so I
had to hear it from Andrew Wiebe on Extra Time.
So what did Wiebe say about it first? Set the stage for what you heard.
Very briefly, dude. Wasn't able to deep dive into it. Just mentioned something about a barn and burn it down, and just open bar for Johnny Russell and taxidermy being destroyed or something.
Yes.
So not much more got said. And then I text you and you were like, oh yeah. And you sent me the article and I was like, shit.
It's long.
It's pretty neat. Like
Good.
You don't really get to hear those stories behind the scenes like that. But to set the stage, I mean, back in, right early season, dude, we were 10 games winless. Something needed to happen, right? And it kind of kicks off with Mike Illig talking to players.
Yep.
And being like, is the coach the problem?
Yep.
Here's something that I thought was awesome, that all the players emphatically were like, no, like Peter's not the problem. We're the problem. We need to get our shit together.
That is true. Yeah. Which it's interesting that, at that point, the ownership was looking into whether a coaching change was necessary. We've heard that, but, this is further confirmation of that. And then, there was a line in one of the Behind the Shield videos where Johnny just says, thanks to Mike for the ranch, because that's what changed the season as well. And, I never noticed that line, but obviously Sam McDowell did. And so he dug a little bit on it more. And long story short.
Where is this ranch?
It's owned by Mike Gillig, one of the Sporting KC owners.
The rich get richer, baby.
And so essentially, what he determined and figured out through talking with the players is they kind of felt so dejected. They didn't trust each other as much anymore. They weren't having fun. They're just essentially the chemistry was gone, which based on my experience being in the locker room after those games, having Johnny Russell say lines like, I genuinely don't know how to fix it. Just seeing the look in their eye, like, yeah, that rang true to what I observed. And so Mike Gillig is quoted as saying they needed to hit the release valve hard. So and I want to know if this is how it actually went down, because I want to know Peter's reaction. One afternoon, he called Coach Peter Vermees and told him that he was canceling a weekday practice. The players are going to the ranch, he said. And so I want to know Peter's reaction when the owners stepping in, canceling practice, because I'm sure Peter's like, hold on now.
Yeah, I mean, what do you say to that? For one, you're not going to say, no, you're not. But he had to have been like, okay.
Right. So there's this thing, Maple Ranch. It's about an hour south of Kansas City. Basically, they told the players, you're all going there. You're staying overnight. Meet with our sports psychologist first. It's only going to be players. There'll be an open bar. And the quote that Mike Gillig told Johnny Russell was, quote, burn the place down, which I obviously not literally, but I think was just like, hey, let loose, have fun, do whatever. And so,
what would be wild, what I'm taking away from this right now? You're being told, hey, pack your shit, you're staying here tonight. What if Fontas was like, well, my wife's out of town, I have the kids. Like something like that,
That is
it's
true.
It's weird to just be like, go pack a bag. It's like, hold on, I have responsibilities outside of this work.
Adult with a life.
Yeah, that's what I would think.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And I mean, basically, it goes on to say that, they had a long time inside during the day. They had drinks. Sounds like there were bartenders. They had a good time. And then they had a campfire that lasted like 5 hours where they decided no one should take offense to anything that was said. No one should take anything personally. And it was Kendall McIntosh who said, and everybody has to say something, which is kind of cool that the backup keeper, arguably third string keeper, was like, we all got to be a part of this.
Because he wanted to speak.
Probably. He's like, I'm not getting voted down on my speak.
He's like, hey, I have a voice too. Okay.
Yeah. So they go in there, they do this, and basically they end up airing their grievances. And they apparently some of the things that were said were pointed at some other players, and they don't go into what those are, but
to say not to take offense, like that's already prefacing it for like, I'm about to shit all over some of your guys' soccer playing skills.
Sure. And we don't know what really was said, but it started at 11 p.m. apparently and went till 3 or 4 in the morning.
Jesus Christ.
And drinks were flowing. It says by the morning, the place was in need of repairs. Leftover beverages were strewn about. Taxidermy had been broken. Plenty of messes were there to clean up. And then the next game, they went to Seattle and they beat the Sounders in Seattle. So clearly it worked. And then the players were like, yeah, maybe we make this a regular thing. And then this is what you alluded to earlier. At the very end of this article, it says there's one detail that they would like to keep internal. Starting with the Seattle game, after goals, players huddled in a circle, put their arms around each other like they did at the campfire, and then shake their hips back and forth. And there have been rumors about like, what is this fire pit dance? What started it? And I guess Sam wanted to ask Johnny Russell, and he goes, so I've heard, and Johnny interrupts him. He goes, yeah, it's not time for that part of the story yet.
Every man knows exactly what this is, okay? Like, absolutely.
And so, yeah, it sounds like they had, I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to find out if I can. And if I can find out, I'll say, sounds like they had an intimate bonding experience in a circle around the fire.
It sounds like they had a little compare and contrast and a little wiggle, you know?
So, and if that's what it's sword fight, as long as everybody was consenting and was, you know, a part of it, and that's what it took to get them to turn their season around, then hey, more power to them.
We've all done some weird stuff. I when I was younger, I was literally in the hot tub with my brother and my cousins, and there was snow all over the ground, and I was dared to go sit in the snow naked.
Mm-hmm. And you did.
And I did. But then when you get back in the hot tub, it's the most glorious feeling.
So, I mean, the point of this is, one, it's kind of wild that, like, I think it shows the importance of sports psychology, or just like psychology in general when you're doing any job, but particularly sports, where it's like, if the players, and sure, there's probably still criticism to be had about tactics and Peter Vermees and roster construction and depth and all that. But for whatever reason, for this team in this season, they needed to get mentally right, and it took literally going to spend an overnight at a drunken ranch party where they maybe or maybe didn't get naked around a fire pit together, and that's what fixed them. So,
I mean, guys, just go watch their celebrations. It's so funny. I mean, it's exactly what it is.
So, I mean, it's cool that Mike Yellig, the owner, had the willingness to do it. He said, you know, with all of the repairs and stuff that had to be done, he was like, yeah, it's a small price to pay.
Listen, some owners don't give a shit. Some owners would not reach out to your players. And sorry, Nick said, I'm going to talk about it. Nick said, sometimes you just got to get naked and sing Kumbaya. I read kombucha, so I got interested. But no, some owners don't give a shit, man. So for Mike Illig to be like, okay, talk to me. Is it the coach? Is he the problem? Because we can fix that.
Right.
And I just love how the players are like, hell no.
Well, it is cool. And not that like players shouldn't have final say on everything. Obviously, like sometimes they're not right, but it is, I do think it's an important sign of respect to go to the veterans on the team and be like, talk to me, because you can look at what goes wrong when owners get too meddlesome. And it's a different sport, but you look at the owner of the Carolina Panthers right now. They just fired a bunch of their coaching staff, their head coach, their offensive coordinator, QB coach, running backs coach, because they sold their future to draft Bryce Young at quarterback last year, and it's not going well right now. And this was the first year of this coaching regime that they supposedly built for this quarterback, and it's going pretty bad. Not only did they do that, they basically traded, 2 or 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, their top wide receiver. They sold their future for this quarterback, so they got to make it work. And a lot of the reporting is it was the owner who was dead set on picking that quarterback over CJ Stroud, who looks real good for the Texans, and was that owner who decided to now clean house after less than a year for his hand-picked coaching staff, because he's reportedly a very meddlesome owner. And it doesn't seem to have a good relationship with players, coaching staff, or whatnot. So it is cool to see where there's a dumpster fire of an ownership like that, and then look at Sporting's ownership, who, while not perfect, are trying to handle things in a more deliberate way.
Yeah, no doubt.
So
it sucks. It was nice little story, though.
It is a nice little story. It sucks that I read that story, I felt so good, and then the game happens the next day, and it kind of brought me back to earth a little bit. But
we lost because that story came out. It should have been kept under wraps until we won the whole thing.
There you go. I mean, the only thing, the next thing to be aware of is by this Friday, December 1st, Sporting's going to have to turn in which contract options they are going to exercise to the league.
Hey,
we may find out Friday whether Graham Zusi or Roger Espinosa's extensions are picked up. They don't necessarily have to announce it publicly Friday, but there's really no reason to wait on it. So if they're not picked up, that doesn't mean they're not coming back. But we're gonna see some decisions on some roster moves here in just a handful of days for Sporting KC. So we're well into the off season. But
it's fun, man. I always look forward to this time of year too, because there's always there's no shortage of stuff and movement.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the MLS offseason is super busy. So.
It's one of the best off-season sports, really. Like, I can't think of any other off-season I get real excited for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm an NFL fan, so I like the NFL draft, and they've made the combine a spectacle or whatnot, but there are large gaps in between when those
it's too long. That off-season is so long.
Yeah, for MLS, it's like every week there's another roster deadline or expansion draft or supplemental draft or re-entry draft or free agency.
And then boom, preseason.
Preseason, yeah. So I tweeted this after the game last night, and I just want to, like I said, we'll do a larger retrospective about, was this season a success or not? What does it mean going forward? What needs to change? But I said that, yes, there are things for Sporting KC to address this offseason. Some of them may be major, but what I came out of that Houston game with is I was like, I'm just going to be thankful tonight that a team that went winless in its first 10 games on a historically bad streak gave me something to cheer for all the way into the weekend after Thanksgiving and as far as the conference semifinals, because that's insane. I'm disappointed, certainly, but I'm proud of the players for being in that situation and turning it into what they did. So,
yeah, they, man, it's we were on record. We were on track to be the worst team in league history. Mm-hmm. Instead, we became the only team in league history to make the playoffs after 10 games winless,
Yeah. So
wild.
And now they're already selling 2024 home opener packs.
Yeah.
They're onto it. So
we're going home opener, Leagues Cup ticket, and another match ticket as well. So little 3-pack there, trying to get you started.
Probably not Miami and probably not St. Louis, but
probably not. But that's all right. When you got season tickets, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's true. So I don't know, man. It's a bummer, but like I said, right now I'm kind of looking on the season with gratitude, and then
you should.
There will be time coming up for us to burn the place down.
Yeah, I mean, the whole playoffs, man. I've just been like, cool, nice to be here.
Yeah,
good to see you.
So, thank you all. You got anything else you want to say?
No, I don't. Are we back next Tuesday?
I may not be here because I am going to be out of town, but yeah, we'll talk scheduling and see if you and Chris or somebody can bring an episode to the people next week or what we want to do. So we'll let you know on social what we're doing next week.
We'll see if Chris has been nice to me lately. We'll see.
I don't know. He might be, being a little too into WWE. Who knows?
Being a little turd is what he's doing,
Well, thank you all so much for listening and sticking with us through this season. It was a hell of a run. I hope you all had as much fun as we did with the highs and the lows. And I'm excited and I'm motivated to dig into this off-season content and talk to some people, get some interviews, and figure out what Sporting needs to do going forward and how they can build on the success they had in the latter part of this year. But yeah, thank you. Make sure you leave us that 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NoOtherPod, at Dan Kooser, at JCMac03. Shoot us an email. What are your thoughts on the season? NoOtherPod@gmail.com. And check us out, KCSN Soccer on YouTube. See Dan's cold lip. We're via the Kansas City Sports Network app. And until next time, he's Dan. I'm Jimmy. We'll catch y'all later. See ya.
Steve Clark's a turd.